Greetings, my fellow Americans, Michiganders, those in Jackson, Lansing, Detroit, and Grand Rapids and surrounding areas. Thank you for tuning in to ACVN, the American Conservative Values Network, dedicated and committed to those precepts and principles that have made this nation great: the Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, and the Emancipation Proclamation. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to tune in and to engage us in this political and community discourse and discussion that we feel is relevant and pertinent to all of us. We're in the midst of an extraordinary, amazing, historical election that is forthcoming in the presidency. African-American Barack Obama is in fact currently occupying the White House. Much consternation about the loss of jobs, 14.5 million people unemployed, and of course there seems to be a universal worldwide problem with global recession and slowdown that is affecting every nation upon the 7 continents of the earth. And of course, the electrifying Herman Cain, running on the Republican ticket, is ascended to the front runner for now anyway, and of course at least is in a tie from time to time in certain polls with Mitt Romney, who's been running for president for at least 10 years. And so these two extraordinary persons, Rick Perry, who was in the race, has stepped on his foot and of course ended his campaign for the most part because his inability to remember the very questions that he asked himself to answer. It's interesting. And we have with us now a very distinguished gentleman from our religious community, the distinguished Reverend Dr. Curtis Johnson from Saginaw, Michigan, pastor of Bethlehem Temple of Saginaw, who has been involved in the religious and ecclesiastical element of our society for some time, comes from under the very extraordinary leadership of one of our legendary leaders in the PAW, the late Bishop Morris E. Golder, who built one of the most astounding churches on the face of American soil in Indianapolis, Indiana. We're happy that Curtis Johnson has taken time to come and discuss some of these issues with us, along with health care. Therefore, we welcome him. Curtis Johnson.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Good to see you today. I guess we can start from the top of the ticket and work our way down to the local discussions. Two African-American gentlemen here. You may be of an independent persuasion. I'm of Republican conservative persuasion. You're conservative regardless of what you are. We both share I would imagine, the same disposition on family values.
Yes.
We believe in one man, one woman marriage. We believe in pro-life. We believe in lower taxes and personal responsibility and jobs and all of these good things that just about everyone believes in jobs.
Yes.
Currently, we do have a very interesting experience that has become cosmopolitan to all Americans, and that is a job crisis and a slowing down of the economy. And we see the continued deterioration, I should say, in the urban centers across the United States. What are your thoughts about our present distress?
Well, I think it's reached some critical proportions here. I have people in my church who have professional people who have lost their jobs.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Due to companies downsizing and they're managing, but we definitely need jobs. Obviously, me being from the Saginaw area, our area is hurting tremendously. We need jobs, and we need jobs that can make a difference in a person's life in terms of not just going out and saying you earn a wage, but being able to earn a wage where you can make a living and support a family.
Yes, sir.
So it's definitely of grave concern, and we're looking and hoping and praying for the good of the land, that some of our leaders can step forward and be able to provide an environment that makes our area, specifically in Michigan, in Saginaw County, make it an environment of growth, so that people can have some hope that, hey, we can have a job, we can support our families, we can support our local institutions. We're looking for the same thing that people are looking for in every part of the country. We want health care, we want clean living, safe streets. Everybody's calling for the same thing, and right now we're just America's going through. And particularly Michigan is having a tough time right now when it comes to this thing of having jobs.
It is. Michigan has been at the bottom of the totem pole of states in this country for a number of years. During the years of Governor Granholm, even Democrats were very disgusted with some degree of inability on her part to move things forward, to garner some sort of strategic agenda and then push that agenda to bring about change. It seems that Governor Rick Snyder, to me, despite the fact whether people agree with him or not, has taken some very proactive steps to cut and downsize the size of government, to raise taxes on some people and lower them on others, as well as to restructure government. He's looking at government from a business perspective. He has stated that he will not take a salary. He only takes $1 a year because he came into the office as a very wealthy personality. And he is looking to run government like a business, which is to some extent what most people who are at least libertarians and are free market capitalists and believe in states' rights would like to see government run as. Your thoughts on approaching government from a different disposition on Rick Snyder's behalf as opposed to the way Jennifer Granholm approached governing the state of Michigan?
Well, again, I think you got to make wise decisions when it comes to this, and everybody's looking at the finance part. We want everybody's asking for greater services, more services, but we also know that there's a limited number of dollars out there. So when you have a limited number of dollars out there, until you can generate income, you got to make wise decisions, and we have to spend our money, very wisely. So I am all for creating an environment that is conducive to a growing business, because bottom line is, again, we need jobs. People need to make money, and I'm hoping that he's making good decisions that will grow business in our state, but yet at the same time, again, make it so that people aren't in situations where they're suffering, where they don't have the bare necessities of the things that they need. Obviously, we all know there's going to be some type of social services type system out there, because we do have a large number of poor. We've had incidents in the states where people couldn't afford to pay their gas bill. If I remember correctly, a year or so ago, a fellow in Bay City actually died because they shut his gas off to his house, an older gentleman. So I'm hoping he's taking an approach that will be a wise business decision for the state and help the state grow, but at the same time take care of the needs of the people of Michigan. Is what I.
Would you agree, though, that people who are, and I haven't heard a lot of criticisms of Rick Snyder. I've heard some people who are very uncomfortable with some of his approaches, but his plan and strategy for the state of Michigan for the next at least 2.5 years is found on the internet. Do you not agree that people should read the plan with some sense of attempting to comprehend exactly what it is he's proposing to do? He's obligated to put a plan out there. Yeah. He's elected by the people. And of course, the people put him in office because he got the votes. Burge Bonnell ran against him and was miserably defeated by an extraordinarily astonishing margin. And so there seems to be a mandate for change that came about when he was elected to office. He put his proposal on the internet. I read most of it, and of course didn't have to read all of it because he gave a presentation in many settings that I attended of exactly what that plan consisted of. In terms of him calling for greater fees in different areas, such as through the Department of Secretary of State, in terms of him pulling back regulation, in terms of him changing the MBT tax, Michigan business tax, and finding a better way to structure the tax code of Michigan so that businesses can take more money and put it back into expanding their footprint and adding people to the job roll. And also, I think even this discussion about the bridge, there's a lot of argument about the bridge. Many people would like to see the budget balance first, but it seems that within the first almost 200 days of him being in office, that he is at least touting that there is now a surplus in our general fund of about $236 million, which to me is quite fascinating. I'd like to see and take a closer look at those numbers, because it doesn't sound quite to be, it's almost too good to be true in so many words. So I think that his approach to reinventing government bears looking at what he has posted on the internet, I think he's tried to be very friendly with urban centers, particularly Detroit. He's been over backwards trying to work with Dave Bing, who is a brilliant soul as far as I'm concerned. I know Mr. Bing personally from his campaign when he ran a few years ago, and his heart is in the right place for the city of Detroit. Him trying to push for greater choice in schools. If your children are going to failing schools, why should parents have to continue to force their children to go to failing schools? Schools that are run down and dilapidated, schools where there's crime and violence, where you can't learn but your child's life is being put at stake, where there's robbery and there's assault and there's the proliferation of the drug culture. And there is not a culture of learning, there is a culture of dysfunctionalism and disruption. So when he's pushing these kinds of things and he is calling on people to join him and to be a part of his team to espouse these kinds of virtues in government, do you see this as positive for the state?
I think it's positive. I think what happens tends to happen is people get part of a message. You mentioned earlier about reading what his policies are and what his program is. I think if we can read those programs, or at least provide a forum so that people can see what he's talking about in plain language. There are a lot of people in the community that don't understand a lot of, for lack of a better phrase, political rhetoric or political verbiage and phraseology, and sometimes it can scare people. Okay, I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that Snyder is this horrible person. I think some of the things that he is touting are very good things. Sometimes we hear about limiting regulation and we think that means no regulation. And I don't think that he's saying that necessarily, because we have proven in our society that sometimes companies without regulation can run amok and do things that they shouldn't do. So there has to be some regulation. But I think when it comes to promoting his agenda, there are certain segments of the population where his message has to be made plain to that section of our communities and of our state, so that people can understand what they're getting. Are we paying for eggs, or are we paying for oranges, or whatever? Make that language plain, and I think that will help people. But I do agree that some of the things that he is promoting, we should have accountability when it comes to our schools and teaching our children. Nobody should have a child that's stuck in a classroom with a teacher that's just drawing a paycheck. And that's not to say that all teachers are that way. There's some teachers that are genuinely concerned about teaching and trying to educate children. And I think that those atmospheres, those situations have to be addressed so that people are accountable, and so that the public can get the best product, for lack of a better phrase, that they can get and get the biggest bang for their buck.
And so you believe in education, you believe in good education, you believe in accountability in our academic institutions, whether it be the public school or whether it be the academic institutions of higher learning and education, our colleges, our junior colleges, and our universities. Also, another discussion we had is your thoughts about social service agencies being strategically constructed to create dependency. Problems where dysfunctionalism is proliferate in our urban centers, and where individuals are actually rewarded for out-of-wedlock births, for having children out of wedlock. And the more children they have in and out of wedlock disposition or state, the more money the state pays them in welfare and other kinds of assistance. This to me is counterproductive, because if you're saying to parents they need to educate your children to be able to compete and to be able to be skilled and equipped to seize a job, opportunity, and to take care of themselves, as well as become productive, contributing members of their community and society. But over here, you're actually rewarding individuals to have babies out of wedlock and proliferate a dysfunctional kind of behavior that undermines such a productive culture. It would seem to me that someone in leadership would be able to tie the social service, safety net, if you will, with the public school system and with other institutions and organizations in our community so that they collaborate to make sure that what is being brought forth out of these situations of dysfunctionalism is the best and the brightest of being given their conduit to success without being inhibited and impeded or hindered. And then others who are struggling are being encouraged to move from welfare to work, from welfare to education, from welfare to training, from welfare to responsibility, from welfare to accountability. What do you see when you see Governor Snyder saying, and other governors across the state saying, that the bank is broke? There is no more money. People have to learn how to balance their checkbooks, and now we have to pay the piper. And so because we're teetering on, cities around the state of Michigan are teetering on bankruptcy and receivership, or receivership and bankruptcy. Detroit, Highland Park, Flint, Saginaw, Pontiac, Benton Harbor, Inkster, Ecorse, just to name a few of the larger cities across the state of Michigan. What do you see then is the responsibility of urbanites, regardless of their color, be they white hillbillies or black ghetto folks? I'm sorry to have to say this to hurt your feelings. What is their responsibility in terms and culpability for their own future?
Again, I think there are some things that you have to take into your own hands. The welfare system at its core is a good idea, but like a lot of other programs, it's gotten abused.
You mean the safety net?
It's gotten abused, and you have, again, it's grown into this thing where you have people that have some have either graduated, in some cases some haven't graduated from high school, and they've just went on welfare. For a person that works and gets up morning after morning to go to a job, that's a discouraging sight. I can tell you now, I'm a working person. I have a job.
Yes, you do.
And I don't feel that I ought to get up and go work every day to put bread on my table, to feed and clothe my family, and then somebody else ought to be able to not work, who is able-bodied, not work and still do the same things that I'm doing, so
and live off the system, so to speak.
And that does nobody any good, and we basically end up raising up generation after generation. You know, you mentioned about these unplanned pregnancies and getting pregnant and paying them getting more money for it. Again, you just have a generation raising another generation that could potentially do the exact same thing. So I think I think that cripples our society. I think that cripples people. Work, whether we believe it or not, was God's plan for man.
Yes, it was. Thank you.
He intended for us to work, and if we are able-bodied and able-minded, we ought to be able to get up, go have a job, and go work. It not only does something for us from a financial point of view, it does something mentally. I think a person has at least for me, it does my psyche, does my ego, whatever you want to call it, good to know that I went out and worked and I'm helping to take care of my family. Helping to be, in some cases, a blessing to my neighbor. But again, I think this attitude of just laying back and just trying to draw off the government, something has to be done to make people accountable, to make people know that you just can't live off handouts, and people aren't just going to keep giving you handouts. The system can only bear so much of that, and people need to get out, and if jobs are being made available and you are able-bodied, you need to get up, get out, and go work for a living.
And of course, you cannot develop personal integrity, respect, credibility, dignity, and all of these other descriptions of things, nouns that describe things that one possesses as they develop maturity and become responsible, accountable citizens in their community. Noteworthy where they are, should I say, transitioning into the community successfully, taking their responsible role in the community, and making their responsible contribution to the community good and the proliferation of the same. Let us talk now about the drug culture, the abuse of drugs, the abuse of alcohol, the spread of disease in the urban centers, and the problems that are plaguing our urban centers that undermine illiteracy, drug addiction, out of wedlock births, STDs, and spread of sexually transmitted diseases, alcohol abuse, domestic violence, What are your thoughts about addressing these things with the social institutions? How do you see, and what institutions, first of all, can you enumerate should be involved in assessing the problem and then participating in formulating productive solutions for positive outcomes, if I may?
Again, I think you have to, some of this starts, I think, in younger ages. I mean, we have a social service, a Department of Social Services, and I think somehow we have to...
Well, Family Independence Agency.
Well, yeah, Family Independence Agency.
Trying to teach families to be independent and get off government. You wish they teach them how to do that, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, I think there are some things where we got to find a way. I mean, you have some kids that are born into these situations. And like I said, if a kid is born into a bad situation and that's all he ever sees, that becomes his norm. He doesn't know any better. Mm-hmm. And I think somehow we have to get to a point where we are empowering people and helping single mothers, for example, that are in some of these neighborhoods where this kind of activity goes on. We've got to find a way to be able to reach these people that want to make a change. Mm-hmm. And again, I think that's a constructive use of government finances and of government services to try to help these people to one, get out of that mindset that all that is and what they see in their neighborhoods, that let them know there is some hope. You can make it out of this area. You can do better for yourself. You can do better for your family. But to sit there and allow monies to go to people and for them to be utilizing those monies for drugs or whatever. I was listening to the radio not long ago, and one of the things Snyder's proposals was to do something with the bridge cards that didn't allow people to use them at a casino. Well, how did that happen in the first place? You know, that's
government run amok.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that never should have been used for that purpose. And I think it's because of that again we're at this, as a part of the reason that we're at this economic crisis that we're in, because we had people being irresponsible with that. Now when somebody comes in to try to legislate it, not only are they going after that person, but you know how it works. You take a wide sweep, you catch some of the good folks too. So we've got to find some kind of way, and our leadership has to find some kind of way. The folks that are wicked and are doing wrong, they need to get what they deserve. But the folks that are trying to do right, again, we need to be able to help them to succeed, to help them to do right.
That's a good segue into discussions of corruption. Kwame Kirkpatrick is facing over 50 counts from the U.S. Attorney's Office on fraud, racketeering under the RICO Act, as well as embezzling millions of taxpayers' dollars. His father, Bernard, likewise has been charged. There is a crisis in public confidence with respect to leadership because of these abuses and these excesses that have plagued cities and caused them to be run amok into a disposition of almost the brink of receivership and bankruptcy. So I'm thinking that you agree that public corruption does need to be investigated. It needs to be prosecuted.
Yes.
And individuals need to be incarcerated. Your thoughts on investigation, prosecution, and incarceration?
Well, again, a crook is a crook because he wants to be crooked. And if that is occurring, these people has to be dressed. This goes back to something you said earlier. It goes back to integrity. How can you expect people to support a government if they don't have belief that their government is doing the right things? If people if our leadership, if they've lost credibility, if we've lost any hope that they're going to do anything right, again, how is society going to make it? You can't expect the Indians to line up and do right if we see the chiefs messing up all the time.
Exactly.
So again, these people have to be dealt with, and if they get in there and they're not doing the job right, if they're embezzling monies, if they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing, there's nothing wrong with them being investigated, as long as, again, it's a fair investigation, they're given their due process, and if they are found to be guilty, they should be taken out of office, they should be prosecuted. We cannot afford to have thousands and hundreds of thousands upon dollars being embezzled. Like you said, we've got cities on the brink of bankruptcy, and we've got folks embezzling the money out of these cities. Well, again, you're denying good people the opportunity to have a good functioning government or good functioning schools. You could argue that our society is somewhat dysfunctional because we've had dysfunctionality in our leadership positions and in some of our government positions at the top of our corporations and at the top of our governments.
Synonymous observation on my part. Let's talk about some of the work that you do. You work with OSHA, and that acronym I can allow you to explain to our audience what they do. But you are in the business with a government agency that is interested in keeping people safe.
Yes.
And making sure that they're not exposed to bloodborne pathogens. Universal precautions are in place, and infection control is in fact structured so that it prevents exposure to biohazard waste and other things that in fact can be harmful to individuals who work in the healthcare industry and or other industries, be they manufacturers, industrial or technological dispositions and or institutions where people are employed. If you could explain to our audience exactly what MyOSHA stands for and what is it that MyOSHA does.
MyOSHA stands for the Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Association Administration. I'm with the CET division, the Consultation, Education, and Training part of MyOSHA.
Fascinating.
We do have a compliance part of the organization. They're our police, so to speak. And the primary goal of MyOSHA is to make sure that is to protect the worker. Their main mandate is that the employer shall provide a place of employment that is free from all serious recognizable health and safety hazards that could cause injury or death. And so Michigan OSHA and federal OSHA has a set of regulations out there that employers are obligated by law to comply with. And if the compliance group receives a complaint of a unsafe work condition, whether it be safety or health, they go out and will investigate that complaint and then if necessary, issue citations and or penalties depending on the seriousness of the situation.
And encourage those particular employers to fix the situation.
Exactly, to fix it. One of the things that I'm proud to say about MyOSHA is that we have a consultative services organization, which is the part I work for, and it's really geared toward helping employers, more specifically toward small employers, but employers in general, and we can come in and do consultative services for the employer and look and see what standards apply to their industry, see if they're complying with those standards, and if they're not, then we can help them. There are programs out there. There's a standard called the Hazard Communication Standard, where you have to have a written hazard communication program and you have to be able to communicate the hazards associated with the various chemicals that employees are working with, communicate it to the employees, and also address how they can protect themselves from it or what the company is doing to protect the employees. And we can come out, we can help them write a program. We have sample programs available to make it easier on them. We can come out and do air monitoring if they have employees working with, working around
pollutants,
air pollutants, things like carbon monoxide or methyl ethyl ketone, things like that. We can do air monitoring, see if the employees are overexposed. We can look at their ventilation systems and see if their ventilation systems are okay. So a variety of things that are geared toward really helping the employer, and I'm glad to say we have some good people that work for our organization, both in leadership and down to the rank and file. They really care about the work that they do, and we go out and we try to do the best we can to aid employers in complying with the standards. And the good part about having one of the consultants come out is that if we come out and we find the violation, there's no penalties, there's no citations. We're just there to help you abate
so it's a proactive approach. Our time is up. It is a proactive approach to working with employers and assisting them with fixing problems with regard to exposures that could be harmful and i.e. even fatal in the event of exposure to such by employees. This is outstanding. You have been watching American Conservative Values Network. Of course, we're dedicated and committed to those precepts and principles that have made this nation great, and much of our discussion today has been on socio-economic issues that, of course, are affected by things that undermine the free market system. As you are well aware, Bishop Combs, the host of this show, is a free market, free enterprise capitalist that believes in allowing markets to, of course, do what they do best, and that is receive capital, and for small businesses to take such capital and reinvest it and create jobs. Hopefully we'll get there one day. But in the meantime, today we have tried to solve as many problems as we can, and we're sorry if we let you down. God bless you. God love you. Heaven smile upon you. Have a